The asteroid arena was a dust ball plucked from the universe's naval lint, unremarkable except for the fact it was about to host a spectacle of violence that would either secure humanity's future or doom them to a life of alien pethood. The arena itself was a testament to Graxillian overengineering, massive, gaudy, and entirely inappropriate for any species with a semblance of taste. Commander Jackson Voss stood at the center of the so-called preparation chamber, a charmless cavern of metal and flickering lights. It smelled like burnt ozone and old sweat, about as inviting as an Epsilon prison cell. Jackson figured if they lost, he might get to compare the two. "Another day in paradise, Commander," Sergeant Leela Grint said, her voice dripping with sarcasm sharper than a razor-edged asteroid shard. "If by paradise you mean a glorified cage match set up by tentacle-headed overlords, then yeah, I'm living the dream," Jackson replied, rolling his eyes. He had a face that looked like it had seen a few too many close encounters with blunt objects, but his brains were still miraculously intact. "I'd rather faceplant into a black hole than let those Graxel bastards turn us into house pets," Leela grumbled, checking her plasma rifle with the kind of care reserved for religious artifacts. "Though I guess fetching the newspaper for some slimy, bug-eyed overlord has a certain appeal," Jackson snorted. "Let me know how that career change works out for you." "I hear they offer great dental." Across the chamber, the rest of Jackson's team prepared with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Private Max Crows stood by, polishing his combat boots as if they were the only thing keeping him from a cosmic breakdown. "You ready for the big game, Crows?" Jackson asked, striding over. Max looked up, his youthful face marred by a deep scowl. "About as ready as I am for a close encounter with a Graxel love probe. Now there's an image I didn't need," Leela said, grimacing. The Graxel themselves were a strange lot, towering, with skin that shimmered like slick oil and eyes that seemed constantly on the verge of popping out. They had the social grace of a malfunctioning droid and the patience to match, making them excellent hosts for a contest where losing meant more than just a bruised ego. Jackson had read the ancient accounts about Graxel gatherings. Supposedly, they favored contests of wit, skill, and occasionally, outright brutality. This particular event was a bit of all three wrapped into a nice package of potential human extinction. "Gather round, you sorry lot," Jackson called to his team. "Here's the plan. We go in, we make them regret ever thinking we'd make good pets, and we get out with enough dark matter to light up half a galaxy." Corporal Elena Marsh, an eternal cynic with a stare that could curdle milk, raised an eyebrow. "And if that doesn't work, then we become the universe's first coffee-fetching, newspaper-wielding, human-petting zoo," Jackson replied without missing a beat. "Sounds like a solid plan," Elena retorted. "Could use a bit more firepower, though." "Firepower we got," Jackson assured her, tapping his holstered blaster. "It's the Graxel that are gonna be in short supply by the time we're done." The arena's comm system crackled to life, a voice as smooth as a gravel slide announcing the start of the contest. The Graxel, always efficient when it came to entertainment, wasted no time when it came to overseeing potential new playthings. "Contestants, prepare for initiation. We remind you that failure will not be tolerated," the voice droned, managing to sound both bored and menacing. "They have a way with words, don't they?" Max muttered. Jackson smirked. "Yeah, real poets. Let's show them how humans do poetry, with a side of plasma blasts." The team filed out of the chamber into the arena's main field, a sprawling expanse of jagged rocks and artificial hazards that would make a minefield look like a walk in the park. It was all very theatrical, designed to maximize the chance of painful, humiliating death. Perfect for an interstellar audience with a taste for the macabre. "Welcome, noble participants," a voice boomed from every corner of the arena, translated into a dozen languages but sounding equally condescending in each. "You are here to compete for your species' place in the cosmos." "Great, a pep talk," Leela whispered. "Just what we needed." Remember, this isn't just about survival, the voice continued, ignoring her. It's about proving your worth to exist in our grand universe. Bit late for that, isn't it? Max said, rolling his eyes toward Jackson. Let them have their moment, Jackson replied. I just hope they like the surprise we're packing. And by surprise, you mean violence, Alina interjected succinctly. The Graxil overseers watched from their elevated platform, tentacles twitching with anticipation. They were probably disappointed if they were expecting a quiet surrender. The game began with a blinding flash of light, followed by the kind of chaos that made Jackson's heart sing. Plasma bolts zipped through the air, explosions punctuated the action like violent punctuation marks, and the screams of competitors, both human and otherwise, added a symphony of suffering. Jackson led the charge, a whirlwind of aggression and dark humor. Heads down, eyes up, he barked to his team. And remember, don't get dead, it's bad for morale. Leela, at his side, fired with the precision of a seasoned veteran. If this doesn't work out, we could always start a traveling circus. With our luck, we'd end up the main attraction, Jackson shot back. Max, despite his earlier reluctance, was a blur of motion and energy, dodging and weaving like a dancer turned warrior. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm starting to enjoy this, he admitted, breathless yet oddly cheerful. Don't get too comfortable, Alina warned, covering his flank. The Graxil are still watching. Yeah, well, let them watch, Jackson growled, tossing a grenade that erupted in a satisfying shower of sparks and enemy shrieks. This show is just getting started. The Graxil overseers, safe in their fortified perch, exchanged glances, if their bulbous eyes could be called that. To them, this was merely an amusing diversion, a chance to see what their would-be pets were capable of. But Jackson had bigger plans. The humans pressed forward, carving a path through the chaos with laser-like focus and a healthy dose of reckless abandon. The arena's traps were numerous and deadly, but nothing that couldn't be overcome with a bit of ingenuity and a lot of stubbornness. Remember why we're here, Jackson shouted over the din. It's not just about winning, it's about showing them what humanity's made of. And if that doesn't work, Leela asked, reloading with practiced efficiency. Then we die trying, Jackson replied with a grin, which is almost as good as winning. Each step forward was a step closer to victory or defeat, but Jackson couldn't afford to think about the latter, not with his species' future dangling by a thread. The battle raged on, an intense, chaotic dance of survival. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Jackson couldn't help but think that even if they lost, they'd at least go down swinging. And in the end, maybe that's all that really mattered. Commander Jackson Voss had seen some twisted setups in his time, but the asteroid arena took the cosmic cake. It was like being in the universe's most expensive garbage dump, designed by a committee of demented aliens who wanted nothing more than a front-row seat to humanity's downfall. Standing at the edge of the arena, Jackson felt the weight of the universe, or at least the Graxilian sector of it, bearing down on him like a hungry neutron star. Looks like someone let a toddler design a death trap, Lyra Solin quipped beside him, adjusting the interface of her portable tech rig. She was the team's tech specialist, and if there was anyone who could slice through alien software like it was a ripe cantaloupe, it was her. Bet you a week's rations this whole setup is bugged to hell. Graxil don't know squat about cybersecurity, Jackson chuckled, his eyes scanning the bizarre landscape. Why do you think they've got so many eyes? They need spares for when they go blind staring at their own idiocy. Private Max Crows, still scowling like it was his only facial expression, stood to one side, watching the proceedings with the grim determination of a man who'd accidentally wandered into a slaughterhouse and realized he was the main course. At least, we're not alone. Some consolation, right? A bunch of other poor bastards in the same boat doesn't make the sinking any less wet, Sergeant Leela Grint chimed in, offering Max a tight-lipped smile. But drown or float, we're in this together, kid. Jackson nodded, turning his attention back to the challenges ahead. The arena was full of competitors, humans and other species alike, all vying for a chance to avoid becoming someone's galactic pet rock. Stay sharp, everyone. We're here to win, not to become someone's novelty aquarium decoration. As they moved forward, Lyra tapped a few keys on her rig, pulling up the arena schematics. Looks like we've got a few surprises in store. There's a central command node somewhere beneath this mess that controls the whole shebang. We access that, we might be able to turn this spectacle into a fireworks show the Graxil won't soon forget. That or we blow ourselves to kingdom come, Elena Marsh, their resident cynic, replied, eyes narrowed. Gotta say I'm not thrilled about either option. Come on, Elena, where's your sense of adventure? Lyra teased. Or have you left it back on Earth with your last shred of optimism? Optimism is for suckers, Elena grumbled. And I lost my sense of adventure the last time I had to scrape someone else's guts off my boots. Enough chit-chat, Jackson ordered, though even he couldn't suppress a grin at Elena's morbid humor. It was part of why he'd kept her around. Nothing killed nerves like a well-timed dose of nihilism. We've got a job to do. The team maneuvered through the first leg of the arena, a gauntlet of shifting platforms over a pit of something that looked suspiciously like boiling acid. Jackson had seen enough alien game shows to know that whatever it wasn't going to give them a tan. Mind the gap, Leela muttered dryly, hopping across with the grace of a cat on a hot tin roof. Her plasma rifle gleamed in the flickering lights, a beacon of lethal promise. Look on the bright side, Jackson said as he followed. At least we're getting our cardio in. Around them, the graffiti of chaos continued, with competitors falling to traps and each other in a cacophony of grunts and alien screeches. The Graxil, perched like demented vultures, watched eagerly, their appetites for disaster whetted by the madness below. Enjoy the show while you can, slime balls, Jackson muttered under his breath. We're just getting warmed up. As they made their way through the next phase, a labyrinthine maze with walls that shifted unpredictably, Lyra's rig began to beep insistently. I've got something, she said, punching a series of commands into her device. There's a data stream here and it's got Graxilian fingerprints all over it. What are they trying to hide? Jackson asked, glancing back at her. Give me a sec, Lyra said, her fingers a blur. These bastards are using the arena as a cover for something bigger. It's not just a game, it's a test. They're gathering data on us, seeing how we react, strategize, and if we fail, they get a whole species worth of free labor, Max finished, his face paler than usual. We're the test subjects in their twisted little science fair. Not on my watch, Leela growled, her grip on her plasma rifle tightening. I'll see them burn before I let them turn us into pets. Jackson's mind raced, connecting the dots. If we can get to that command node, we can broadcast the truth. Let the galaxy know what the Graxil are up to, maybe even turn the tables. Great plan, Elena said dryly, assuming we don't get fried first. It's a risk we'll have to take, Jackson replied. We've got one shot, one chance to make this right. Let's not waste it. With renewed determination, they pushed deeper into the arena, their path a dance of survival and strategic chaos. The Graxil's traps were clever, but not clever enough to outsmart a team of desperate, determined humans who had nothing left to lose. Almost there, Lyra reported as they cleared another hurdle, a particularly nasty section filled with automated turrets. The node's just ahead, but it's guarded, heavily. Of course it is, Jackson said, not even slightly surprised. Nothing worth doing is ever easy. The team gathered at the edge of the final approach, the air tense with anticipation. The node lay within a fortress of energy shields and armed drones, a veritable fortress in its own right. Any bright ideas? Leela asked, glancing from Jackson to Lyra. Just one, Jackson said, cracking his knuckles. Hit them where it hurts. Right in the antennae, Elena quipped, aligning her sights. Let's make it count. They charged together, a whirlwind of defiance and aggression. Plasma fire lit up the darkness and the drone swarm descended. But the humans were ready, each movement a testament to their resolve and tenacity. Keep moving, Jackson roared, his blaster cutting through the chaos. "We've come too far to stop now." Max, who'd found his stride amidst the insanity, darted forward to disable a cluster of turrets. "I'm starting to think I like this," he yelled, a crazed grin on his face. "Don't get too attached," Leela shouted back. "We're not planning on making this a regular gig." The humans pressed the attack, and for a moment it seemed fate might smile on them after all. Lyra, in the heart of the fray, jammed her rig into the central console, fingers flying as she hacked into the node systems. "Broadcasting now." "What do you see?" Jackson demanded, holding the perimeter as the Graxil's defenses began to crumble. "Everything," Lyra replied, a fierce light in her eyes. "And it's not good. They've got plans, Commander, detailed plans. This arena's just the beginning. If we don't stop them here, we will," Jackson interrupted, his voice steel. "We're not going down without a fight." The broadcast went out in a burst of static and code, reaching into the vastness of space. A call to arms, a warning, a plea for help. To anyone and everyone who might listen. "Did it work?" Max asked, breathless. "We'll find out soon enough," Jackson said grimly. "But either way, we've made our stand." The Graxil, realizing their game was up, began to panic, their gelatinous forms quivering with rage and disbelief. For the first time, Jackson thought he saw fear in those bulbous eyes. "Look at that," Leela said, her voice tinged with satisfaction. "I think we've got their attention." "You think they'll back off?" Elena asked, reloading with a practiced hand. "Doubt it," Jackson replied. "But it's not about making them back off. It's about showing them what humanity's made of." "Stubbornness and spite, mostly," Lyra said with a grin. "And a little bit of hope," Max added, surprising them all. Jackson nodded, his eyes fixed on the Graxil overseers. "Let's see if they can handle it." Thus, the humans stood, defiant amidst the chaos, a testament to their resilience and will. For in the heart of the arena, they'd shown the galaxy what they were truly capable of: survival, defiance, and an unyielding spirit that refused to be conquered. The preparation chamber was about as inviting as a hangman's noose, and it smelled like someone had decided to start a sweaty sock collection in a burning trash heap. The flickering lights did their best impression of a disco ball on its last breath, casting jittery shadows over the assembled crew. Commander Jackson Voss was leaning against a wall that felt like it hadn't been cleaned since the dawn of space travel, staring at the monitors that displayed the hellscape of the asteroid arena. "So, Voss," Sergeant Leela Grint said, plopping down beside him, plasma rifle balanced across her knees like a security blanket with a trigger. "What's the plan? Or are we just going to wing it and hope for the best?" Jackson rubbed his chin, considering the mess they were in. "Well, Leela, I was thinking maybe we could ask the Graxil to let us out, politely. Maybe offer them some cookies. What do you think?" "Sounds solid," Leela replied, her sarcasm as thick as the grime on the walls. "I'm sure they'll be real receptive to that after we broadcast their dirty laundry to the universe." Private Max Crows was busy fiddling with his gear. He looked about as relaxed as a rabbit in a wolf pack. "If they ramp up their psychological games, we're going to need more than a please and thank you," he muttered, voice as grave as ever. "Max, you sound like someone canceled your birthday," Lyra Solin chimed in, her fingers tapping away on her portable tech rig like it was a piano, and she was a virtuoso of impending doom. "Cheer up. We're in the biggest intergalactic reality show since Dancing with the Asteroids." Max gave her a look that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else, even in a Graxilian pet shop. "Just trying to be realistic here. They won't stop until we're broken." "Well, they're going to have to try harder," Jackson said, straightening up. "Humans don't break easy. We bend, we adapt. We find the cracks and wedge ourselves in like the stubborn bastards we are. Or like a bad rash," Lyra added, grinning like a Cheshire cat with a penchant for sabotage. Jackson nodded. "Exactly. We need a plan that plays to our strengths: ingenuity, unpredictability, and a complete disregard for our own safety." "Sounds like a Tuesday," Leela remarked, standing up and cracking her neck with a sound that echoed like gunfire. "First thing we need," Jackson continued, "is to throw them off balance. They're expecting us to play by their rules. So let's not. Lyra's eyes gleamed with the light of 1,000 bad ideas. I can hack into the arena's environmental controls, turn their traps against them, make it rain acid on their heads instead of iors. Max's expression remained unchanged, but there was a flicker of interest. Think you can pull it off? Lyra shrugged, already engrossed in the screens of her rig. I've hacked into more secure systems than this. Remember the time I made the Martian Senate's lights flash pink during their live broadcast? They thought it was a protest. Good times, Leela said, barely suppressing a smirk. Jackson crossed his arms, thoughtful. Okay, we use their own tech against them, but we need more, something unexpected, something they can't predict. How about we get a little theatrical? Leela suggested. Set off some fireworks, make a scene. Draw their attention while we move in the shadows. Flashy distractions, Max said, nodding slightly. Could work, could also get us killed. But that's the beauty of it, Jackson countered. They think they've got us pegged as predictable soldiers with predictable tactics. Let's show them just how wrong they are. Lyra was already hard at work, fingers dancing over her device. Give me a few minutes and I'll have the arena throwing its own version of a rave. As Lyra worked, Jackson addressed the group, his voice low but steady. Remember, this is about more than just us. It's about showing them we're not some disposable sideshow. We're here to prove humanity's more than just a collection of stubborn meatbags. Here, here, Leela said, raising her plasma rifle like she was toasting to their chances, or lack thereof. A sudden crackle of static erupted from the arena's speakers, and the all-too-familiar voice of the Graxillian announcer slithered through the air, dripping with that special blend of condescension and malice only an alien overlord could manage. Competitors, it seems some of you are under the impression that this is more than just a game. How delightful. We do love a spirited challenge. Spirited challenge, my ass, Lyra muttered, rolling her eyes as she continued working. I'd like to see them survive a day in a cubicle farm. The Graxillian voice continued, unfazed. Let's see how you fare when the stakes are raised. A little surprise twist just for our human friends. Surprise twist, Max repeated, his voice laced with skepticism. That's never a good sign. Probably means they're going to throw more mud in the gears, Leela said. Or more gears in the mud. Either way, it's going to suck. Jackson grimaced, every part of him itching to get back into the fray. Whatever they throw at us, we'll handle it. We've got grit and a healthy disregard for personal safety. Don't forget my stunning good looks, Lyra added, completely straight-faced. How could we? Jackson replied dryly. Let's get this circus started. As they moved out, the arena greeted them with a cacophony of alien war cries and mechanized menace. The Graxil, true to their word, had upped the ante. Platforms shifted beneath them, the ground itself seemed to writhe, and the air was filled with the scent of ozone and desperation. Looks like someone invited the whole zoo, Leela remarked, eyeing the assortment of bizarre creatures around them, each more lethal-looking than the last. Hope they brought snacks, Jackson said, his blaster at the ready. I'm starving. Lyra's fingers flew over her rig, and moments later, the arena's ambient lighting pulsed erratically, like a bad trip through a neon jungle. Stage 1, complete. Now let's turn up the heat. As promised, the environmental systems began to malfunction in spectacular fashion. What had been a carefully controlled setting transformed into a chaotic carnival of unexpected hazards. Acid rain fell in sheets, and high winds spun debris like a blender with a vendetta. Nice touch, Max said, narrowly avoiding a chunk of falling metal. If they wanted chaos, you definitely delivered. Just wait until I get the sound system going, Lyra replied, grinning. I'm thinking heavy metal, real heavy. The Graxil's attempts at psychological manipulation were thwarted by sheer human audacity. Competitors from other species, caught off guard by the sudden shift, fell back in disarray, leaving gaps in their defenses. Time for the fireworks, Leela announced, launching a series of flares into the sky. They exploded in brilliant colors, a dazzling spectacle that drew eyes away from the human stealthy advance. Very pretty, Jackson commented, shifting through the pandemonium. Almost makes me forget we're fighting for our lives. As the Graxil scrambled to regain control, the humans pressed their advantage, moving like shadows through the chaos. Lyra's rig continued to spit out glitches and malfunctions, turning the arena's own systems into a liability for their alien overlords. Best part is, they'll never see it coming, Lyra said, her tone bubbling with glee. They're too busy tripping over their own tentacles. Jackson weighed their next steps, eyes scanning the madness around them. We need to find a way to make this permanent, expose the whole charade beyond doubt. We've got the broadcast out, Max pointed out, shooting down a drone with calm precision. Now we need to make sure it sticks. How about a little insurance? Leela suggested. Get our hands on something they can't ignore, evidence so damning even the Graxil can't spin it. Sounds like a plan, Jackson agreed. Lyra, any idea where we can find something like that? Working on it, she replied, her focus on the screens. If there's anything incriminating down here, it's buried under layers of code and Graxilian paranoia. Well, at least they're consistent, Jackson said, sidestepping a particularly nasty trap. Keep digging. We've got your back. The team moved with precision, carving a path through the chaos like a scalpel through flesh. The Graxil, desperate to regain control, unleashed every dirty trick in their playbook, but the humans met each challenge with grim determination. Jackson couldn't help but admire his team, even amidst the insanity. They were a ragtag bunch of misfits and rebels, but they had guts. More than that, they had each other's backs, and in this cosmic blood sport, that was worth its weight in gold. In the distance, the Graxil overseers hovered, their frustration palpable even from afar. They were losing control, and they knew it. Lyra, anything? Jackson asked, covering her as she worked. Almost there, she said, her fingers a blur. Just need a few more minutes. Great, Max said, picking off another enemy. Because I'm running low on things to shoot at. I'll try to rectify that, Leela teased, sending a volley of plasma into the melee. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of ducking, dodging, and outsmarting their enemies, Lyra let out a triumphant whoop. Got it. Blueprints for the entire operation. This isn't just a game, it's a blueprint for a galactic takeover. Then let's make sure everyone knows, Jackson said, grinning despite the odds. Lyra, upload it everywhere. Galaxy's going to have a field day with this. As the files spread through networks like wildfire, the humans pressed their advantage, driving their foes back step by bloody step. Think we've got them on the ropes, Leela said, reloading with practiced ease. Better keep swinging then, Jackson replied, eyes gleaming with the thrill of battle. Let's show them what humans can really do. Together they fought on, a beacon of defiance in the heart of the storm. For in the asteroid arena, they'd turned the tables, proving once and for all that humanity was not to be underestimated. The asteroid arena, once a well-oiled death machine, now resembled a frat party gone horribly wrong. Except here, the punch was acid rain, and the guests were highly armed and extremely motivated to kill each other. Commander Jackson Voss stood with his back to a pockmarked pillar, surveying the chaos. It was beautiful, in the way a train wreck is beautiful if the train was carrying live explosives and a bunch of pissed-off alien warlords. Well, this is a clusterfuck, Jackson muttered, as he watched an alien with too many limbs slip on the slick ground and eat a faceful of mud. But it's our clusterfuck. That's the spirit, Leela Grint said, her plasma rifle still warm from constant use. She wiped a smear of alien gunk off her cheek, smearing it more than cleaning it. Though I think we've outstayed our welcome, Jackson laughed, a harsh bark that matched the environment's aesthetic. What was your first clue? The acid rain or the homicidal parade? Lyra Solon was hunched over her rig, tapping away with the fervor of a caffeine-fueled squirt. All right, bad news first. They've reset the arena parameters. We're talking new hazards, nastier critters, and some very angry Graxil who look like they haven't had their morning coffee. Great, Max Crows grumbled, reloading like it was the only thing keeping him from a breakdown. I was just thinking how much I miss being shot at by fresh threats. Hey, at least it's not a cubicle farm, Lyra retorted, not even looking up. I'd take homicidal aliens over TPS reports any day. A sudden rumble shook the arena, and emerging from a hidden trapdoor was a new team of competitors. They were an intimidating mix of alien races, each designed by nature or genetic tampering to be both lethal and profoundly unpleasant to look at. Their leader, a towering brute with skin like molten rock and eyes that radiated malice, pointed in their direction with a clawed hand. "Meet the new neighbors," Leela said, adjusting her grip on her rifle. "Looks like they brought the welcome wagons." "More like demolition derby," Max added, unimpressed. "But they'll find we're a tough act to follow." Jackson watched the incoming horde with the same detached interest he'd reserved for a documentary about dangerous wildlife, except now he was the wildlife and the predators were closing in. "All right, team. Time to show them we're not just here to get stomped on." The Graxil, evidently miffed at the humans' persistence, had clearly decided to up the stakes. This new wave of competitors was no haphazard collection of the universe's misfits. These were seasoned killers, the kind who'd put eating human on their resumes if they had any respect for paperwork. The first wave hit hard and fast. Leela took down an alien that looked like a scaly meat grinder with legs, its demise marked by a satisfying sizzle. "I'm starting to get a little tired of fighting for my life," she quipped, ducking behind cover. "I'd kill for a decent vacation." "What's stopping you?" Jackson quipped back, ducking under a swinging blade that seemed to have more personality than some of his past commanders. "Oh right, imminent death." Max was in his element, carefully picking his shots and dropping foes with a precision that would make a surgeon weep. "This is like the world's worst amusement park. All the nausea, none of the fun." The team fell into a rhythm, a deadly, chaotic dance that was part instinct, part insanity. Lyra kept them one step ahead of the arena's shifting hazards, her rig their lifeline in the maelstrom. "Hey, remind me to build these Graxil later," she said, slamming a button that sent a concealed pit off to their left crashing open. "My rates have just gone up. I'd support a raise," Jackson agreed, firing off another round into the melee. Assuming we live to spend it. The new team pressed their advantage, using sheer numbers and brute force to try and corner the humans. It was like being trapped in a nightmare, one where the monsters were real and they weren't interested in talking about their feelings. "They're really committed," Leela noted, dodging a swipe from a multi-limbed monstrosity that seemed to be made entirely of spikes and bad temper. "You'd be too if someone was offering you a prime spot in the Graxillian pecking order," Jackson said, mind running through options as fast as possible. "We need leverage. Something to make them pull back, like a cease and desist order," Leela asked dryly, blasting another alien into gooey chunks. "Not sure how much weight that carries here." Lyra was back at her rig, her fingers moving faster than a caffeinated mosquito. "Got it. There's a control node near the center of the arena. If I can get to it, I can force a full system reboot." "Give us enough time to regroup." "That's only if we're not minced meat by then," Max pointed out as he reloaded, eyes never leaving the incoming threats. "We're not going to have time to argue," Jackson decided, shooting a look at his team. "We push through to that node, cover Lyra, and hold them off long enough for her to work her magic." "Ah, the classic run head first into the lion's den strategy," Leela said with a smirk. "My favorite." "Does it ever work?" Max asked, though his hands were already adjusting his grip, preparing to dive headfirst into the chaos. "It does if we say it does," Jackson replied, motioning them forward. "Let's move." As they charged, the Graxil's elite team matched them step for step. Each alien seemed to have a particular talent for destruction, and they were hell-bent on showcasing it. The humans were outnumbered, but they had a secret weapon, stupidity masquerading as boldness. "Remember to zigzag," Lyra called as she ducked under a hail of enemy fire. "Can't hit what they can't predict. Or we just keep shooting until they stop moving," Max countered, his blaster belting out a veritable symphony of carnage. Leela grinned, even as she juggled keeping herself and her teammates in one piece. I like the way you think, Max. Effective and cathartic. They reached the node, a towering monolith of alien tech that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi horror flick. Lyra set to work immediately, her hands moving with a familiarity born of high-stakes hacking and more than a little desperation. "Buy me a minute," she said, already absorbed in her task. "No pressure," Jackson replied, spinning around to cover her. Just a dozen angry aliens and a ticking clock. The Graxel's team surged, sensing an opportunity. The humans were backed into a corner, but they fought with the ferocity of cornered wolves. Plasma bolts crisscrossed the air, lighting up the arena in brilliant flashes. "Wouldn't this make a great postcard?" Leela shouted, downing an adversary with a well-placed shot. "Wish you were here, love and kisses." Max was less vocal, his energy focused on keeping their attackers at bay. "Lyra, how's it coming?" "I'm running out of jokes and ammo." "Almost there," Lyra exclaimed, her rig humming with energy. She slammed a final command and the arena shuddered like a beast waking from a bad dream. The effects were immediate. The environment flickered, the hazards temporarily shut down, and their enemies stalled in confusion. It was the break they needed, a moment of reprieve in the midst of relentless violence. "Nice work, Lyra," Jackson said, trying to catch his breath. "Now let's see if we can capitalize on it." "Yeah, let's give them a taste of their own medicine," Leela agreed, already eyeing the disoriented enemies like a cat with a cornered mouse. The Graxel's team still had the numbers, but now the humans had the element of surprise. With the arena's death traps offline, they could maneuver more freely, picking their targets with calculated precision. Jackson led the charge, his team falling in line behind him. They moved with the kind of unity only forged in the fires of mutual hatred, hatred for their predicament, their enemies, and most importantly, the bastards who put them there. "You know," Max said, picking off a straggler with a well-aimed shot, "if we make it out of here, I'm never complaining about cafeteria food again." "Speak for yourself," Leela replied, brandishing her plasma rifle like it was an extension of her own arm. "I plan on eating a steak the size of my head." Their renewed push caught the enemy off guard. For all their bluster and bravado, the Graxel's team hadn't expected humans to fight like this, with sheer audacity and a complete lack of self-preservation. As they carved through the opposition, it was clear the tide had turned. The humans were no longer just survivors. They were aggressors, and the Graxel weren't prepared. "Got to hand it to us," Lyra said, pocketing her rig and joining the fight with a blaster of her own. "We're annoyingly hard to kill." "Maybe that's our charm," Jackson replied, firing off a burst of shots. "We refuse to stay in our assigned box." "And I thought it was my stunning good looks," Leela joked, even as she mowed down another alien. "Guess I'll take stubbornness over beauty in this case." Minutes felt like hours, but gradually the humans whittled down their adversaries, leaving only a handful of Graxel and other aliens still fighting. The rest lay scattered across the arena floor, casualties of their own hubris. Max was breathing hard, the exertion and adrenaline taking their toll. "Remind me why we signed up for this again." "Because we're too damn stubborn to quit," Jackson said, taking a moment to scan the battlefield. "And hell, I wouldn't have it any other way." In the distance, the Graxel overseers were visibly agitated, their grand plan unraveling before their many eyes. The humans had taken their challenge and shoved it back down their throats, proving once again that they weren't just another species to be conquered. As the dust settled, the team gathered in the center of the arena, surrounded by the remnants of their enemies. They were battered, bruised, but very much alive. "We did it," Lyra said, disbelief lacing her voice. "We actually did it." "Of course we did," Leela replied with a grin. "We're just that good, remember." Max allowed himself a small, tight smile. "Can't argue with results." Jackson looked at each of them in turn, pride mingling with the exhaustion etched on his face. "All right, let's not celebrate just yet. We still need to get out of here and shove this victory in their smug faces." Think they'll have a nice parting gift for us?" Lyra asked, sarcasm dripping from her words. "Oh, I'm sure," Jackson replied, leading them towards the exit. "But let's make sure they remember Ior's instead." With that, they strode out of the arena, leaving behind a battlefield littered with the proof of their defiance. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about sending a message, loud and clear. Humans weren't just another species to be toyed with. They were an undeniable force to be reckoned with. Jackson Voss sat back against the cold, unforgiving wall of the Graxillian holding cell, a metaphorical boot print stamped across his pride. He'd never considered himself a masochist, but leaning into the wall's sharp angles was the closest thing to comfort available. "Well, this is a fun new low," he muttered to himself, captured like a bug in a jar. Probably an improvement over being dead, though. The cell door slid open with a hiss, and in strode Leela, looking a bit worse for wear. Her hair was a frazzled nest, and her plasma rifle had seen better days, but she still had the defiant glint of a disgruntled postal worker on a Monday morning. "Jackson, you look like crap," she announced, dropping beside him with a clank. "But hey, at least we match. Charming as always, Leela." Jackson rubbed his temples, trying to massage away the headache forming from the screeching overhead lights and the shame of a botched mission. "Any luck on the escape plan front?" "About as much luck as a snowball in hell," Leela shrugged. "Max is working on a diversion, something about using alien tech to scramble their sensors." "It's all very technical and way beyond my interest level." "Good old Max," Jackson said, allowing himself a small smile. The man's a walking contradiction. Can't crack a smile to save his life, but give him an alien gadget and he's like a kid at Christmas. The cell remained silent for a moment, the oppressive atmosphere pressing in on them from all sides. Jackson glanced sidelong at Leela, who was busy picking at a scab on her knuckle. Lyra, trying to crack the Graxillian system. "Bless her overworked heart," Leela replied. "If anyone can find a way to turn this mess around, it's her." Jackson nodded, the weight of responsibility settling back onto his shoulders. "We can't let them win, Leela. I don't want humanity's legacy to be a footnote in some alien history book." "Yeah, well, if nothing else, we've proven we're a monumental pain in their collective asses." Leela leaned back, eyes closing briefly. "Win or lose, that's got to count for something." Meanwhile, in another part of the Graxillian stronghold, Private Max Crows was busy playing with wires. He'd found a console that looked promising, or, at the very least, explosive. "All right, you piece of alien junk," he growled under his breath. "Time to earn your keep." As he fiddled with the innards, Max couldn't help but think about the irony of his situation. His grandma had always said he'd end up in some alien hellhole if he didn't clean up his act. "Well, congrats, Nana," he thought. "Here I am." There was a satisfying buzz as the console sprang to life, a cascade of symbols flooding the screen. Max grinned for what felt like the first time in forever. "Gotcha," he whispered, fingers dancing over the keypad. Back in the cell, Lyra Solin was hunched over her portable tech rig, eyes darting like a hawk on the hunt. She was the team's unofficial miracle worker, and if there was a way out of this, she'd find it. "All right, you Graxillian bastards," she mumbled, "let's see what you're hiding under the hood." Lines of alien code streamed past, and Lyra's brain worked overtime, sifting through the gibberish for anything useful. "Aha," she breathed, spotting a vulnerability tucked away like a dirty secret. But then came the catch. Exploiting it meant bypassing layers of security that made the Death Star look like child's play. "Of course it's never easy," Lyra muttered, cracking her knuckles. With each tap of her fingers, Lyra could almost feel the Graxillian overlords breathing down her neck, their displeasure a palpable force. But if she could just... A siren wailed, slicing through the tense atmosphere like a knife. "Crap," she muttered, hands moving faster. "They're onto us." In the cell, Jackson and Leela exchanged a glance. "That's our cue," Jackson said, pushing to his feet. "Time to move." "Glad to hear it," Leela replied, following suit. "I was starting to cramp up in here." They slipped out into the corridor, keeping low and quick. The The Graxillians would be closing in soon, their mood likely fouler than a cat in a rainstorm. Down the hallway, Max was up to his elbows in wires, his makeshift diversion ready to roll. "Here goes nothing," he said, flipping the switch. The lights flickered, then plunged the entire wing into darkness. "Max, you beautiful bastard," Jackson whispered as they navigated the shadows. "Leela, ready, born ready," she replied, weapon in hand. "Let's give these aliens a show they won't forget." As they made their way to the control room, Jackson couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of their situation. "Is it just me," he said, "or is this starting to feel like one of those bad action movies?" "Hey, I'd watch it," Leela grinned, swinging her rifle into position. Assuming we live long enough for a sequel. The control room loomed ahead, a fortress of alien technology and bad decorating choices. Lyra was already inside, fingers a blur over her rig, while Max kept watch by the door. "We've got company," Max warned, hearing the telltale scuttle of Graxillian guards approaching. "Then let's give them a warm welcome," Jackson said, taking position beside Leela. "Lyra, how's it looking?" "I've found a vulnerability," Lyra replied, not looking up. "But it's like trying to thread a needle with a sledgehammer." "Just do your thing," Jackson urged. "We'll hold them off as long as we can." "Yeah, because I'm sure they'll understand if we ask nicely," Leela added, rolling her eyes. The first wave of Graxillians hit them like a freight train, plasma fire lighting up the room. Jackson and Leela returned fire, each shot precise and deadly. Max joined them, his own blaster spitting out fury. "You'd think they'd learn by now not to mess with us," he said, taking down an alien with a well-placed shot. "Apparently they're slow learners," Leela replied, ducking under a barrage of fire. Jackson was in his element, adrenaline sharpening his focus to a razor's edge. "Keep them off Lyra," he ordered, picking off another Graxillian. "She's our only shot at turning this around." As if sensing the urgency, Lyra's fingers moved faster, each keystroke a small victory in their uphill battle. "Almost there," she muttered, willing the last of the code to fall into place. The Graxillians pressed harder, but Jackson's team held firm, their determination a wall of steel in the face of overwhelming odds. Finally, Lyra slammed the final command home, the control system shuddering as if hit by a physical blow. "Got it," she shouted, the rig humming with energy. Instantly, the Graxillians' tech flickered, systems going haywire as Lyra's hack took hold. It was a small victory, but in their darkest hour it was enough to give them hope. "Nice work, Lyra," Jackson said, a fierce grin breaking through his exhaustion. "Now let's finish this." With their enemy's tech compromised, the humans had the upper hand for the first time. Jackson's team moved with precision, their attacks swift and brutal. The Graxillians, caught off guard, faltered under the onslaught. But it wasn't over yet. Even with their systems in disarray, the Graxillians had numbers on their side, and they were nothing if not tenacious. "Remind me to send them a thank you card later," Leela quipped, blasting another alien into oblivion. For all the target practice. The fight raged on, every second stretching into eternity, but gradually the balance tipped in the humans' favor. They were wounded, weary, but their spirits were unbroken. Jackson led the charge, his team rallying behind him. "We can do this," he called, voice strong despite the chaos surrounding them. "We're not just fighting for our lives, we're fighting for humanity." A renewed sense of purpose surged through them, a fire that refused to be extinguished. They pressed forward, their determination a force that couldn't be denied. As the last of the Graxillians fell, the room fell silent, the only sound the harsh breathing of survivors. Jackson surveyed the scene, exhaustion warring with triumph. "Guess we showed them," Max said, sinking to the floor with a weary grin. "Now what?" "Now we make sure they remember," Jackson replied, turning to his team with resolve. "We've got a message to send, and it's one they won't soon forget." Lyra wiped sweat from her brow, a tired smile playing across her lips. "Let's just hope they have a nice big we told you so banner ready for us." With their victory secured, the humans began their retreat, leaving behind the wreckage of the battle. It wasn't over yet, but they'd taken the first step towards reclaiming their freedom. As they disappeared into the shadows, the Graxillian stronghold lay in ruins, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. It was a message written in blood and fire. Humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were survivors, fighters, and above all, they were a force to be reckoned with. In the end, they were determined to prove one thing above all else, that humanity was here to stay. And even if the odds were against them, they'd fight tooth and nail to ensure their legacy endured, no matter the cost. The Graxillian stronghold loomed like a bad hangover, pressing down with its oppressive weight. Jackson Voss, stoic as ever, peered from the shadows with the kind of resolve that only comes from being entirely fed up with alien bureaucracy. Beside him, Leela Grint held her plasma rifle with the casual grace of a woman who'd just love for someone to try her patience one more time. "All right, team," Jackson began, addressing the ragtag group of captured humans they'd rallied from the holding cells. "We're about to pull off the biggest middle finger to the Graxillians these corridors have ever seen." The crowd was a motley assortment of former desk jockeys, misfit soldiers, and the occasional rogue, cobbled together in the cosmic equivalent of a corporate trust fall. Their faces wore expressions ranging from determined to slightly confused, standard human operating procedure in the face of interstellar absurdity. Sergeant Leela leaned in, smirk tugging at her lips. "You had me at middle finger, Commander. What's the play?" Jackson grinned, the kind of grin that suggested he'd had enough of alien hospitality to last a lifetime. Solans found a vulnerability in their system. "We're going to hit the Graxillian command center, make enough noise to make a supernova jealous." Private Max Crows, ever the pragmatic realist, raised an eyebrow. And then, Jackson shrugged, his nonchalance only slightly forced. "Then we hope we're better at this than they are." He turned to Lyra, who was already tapping away on her portable rig like it was the last game of Space Invaders. "Lyra, you beautiful genius," Jackson said. "You got us our way in." Lyra didn't look up, eyes fixed on the alien code that was the bane of her existence. "Of course. Just had to sweet-talk the Graxillian firewall. They're suckers for witty banter," Max snorted. "I always thought hacking was more headbutting than sweet-talking. Only if you're doing it wrong," Lyra shot back, fingers never pausing. Nearby, Jackson's ragtag army was gearing up, armed with whatever they could scavenge. Improvised weapons, stolen tech, everything had a purpose, even if it was just to look menacing enough to make an alien guard hesitate. "Look alive, folks," Jackson called, his voice carrying a command that brooked no argument. "We're going in hot and we're not coming out until we've made a mess they'll never forget." As they moved out, Leela sidled up to Jackson, voice low enough to avoid carrying. "Think they'll hold up, Commander?" "They'll hold," Jackson replied, confidence in his voice even as doubt gnawed at the edges. "Humans are stubborn like that," Leela chuckled, a dark humor in her eyes. "Guess we'll see if stubborn beats alien arrogance." The march toward the command center was uneventful, which in itself was unsettling. Jackson felt like they were walking through the calm before the storm, and he hated storms. They always messed up his carefully styled hair, metaphorically speaking. The first sign of trouble came with a distant clattering, the kind of noise that suggested someone had just realized a bunch of humans were somewhere they shouldn't be. Jackson knew the feeling all too well. "Looks like the Graxillians are waking up," Max murmured, glancing back down the corridor. "Good," Jackson said, hefting his plasma rifle. "I'd hate to think we were boring them." As they breached the entrance to the command center, the interior was all sleek panels and unsettlingly organic architecture, like someone had decided metal and flesh were interchangeable. Whatever designer planned it had some serious issues. Probably an ex-architect still bitter about zoning laws. Lyra was in the command room already, her rig a blur of activity. The Graxillian systems, once a fortress of alien ingenuity, now flickered and trembled under her touch. Jackson could almost hear the collective wheeze of technological distress. "Okay, everyone, Lyra called over her shoulder, voice a strange mix of focus and exhilaration. "I'm in. Just keep those Graxillian nastas off me while I make this place dance, dance." Leela echoed, swinging her rifle into position. "I do hope it's a tango. I hear aliens are suckers for the classics." The Graxillians flooded in, their chittering language grating as they realized the scale of the insubordination unfolding. Plasma fire filled the air, painting the room in chaotic patterns of light and shadow. Jackson and his team of humans, ragtag, under-equipped, and hilariously ambitious, held their ground. Plasma fire met alien armor in a cacophony that would have done a heavy metal concert proud. Leela picked her targets with the precision of someone who'd been doing this way too long to be remotely healthy. Max, ever the practical one, took a moment to appreciate the absurdity. "I always wanted to say I died doing something cosmically stupid," he quipped, downing an alien with a shot that would have made any sniper jealous. "Shut up and keep shooting, Max," Jackson replied, his grin wild and fierce. As the tide of alien soldiers pressed them, the humans stood firm, a testament to human stubbornness if ever there was one. Lyra, oblivious to the chaos, worked her magic. The room's lights flickered, systems groaning as she pushed them to their limits. "Almost there," she called, her voice a beacon of hope amid the chaos. Jackson nodded sharply, firing into the throng. "Hold the line, we've got this." And then, with a final keystroke and a triumphant shout from Lyra, the Graxillian systems crashed. Lights blinked out, alarms wailed, and the command center descended into chaos. "Nice work, Lyra," Jackson shouted over the din, his voice carrying a note of hard-won victory. Yeah, Lyra replied, grinning as she shut down her rig. Just another day at the office. With the Graxillian systems in disarray, the humans pressed their advantage, driving the now disoriented aliens back. It wasn't a victory parade, but it was a start. Jackson looked at his team, battered, bruised, but undeniably alive. "All right, people, we've got their attention. Now let's make sure they never forget who we are." As they regrouped, Leela chuckled, wiping alien gunk from her cheek. "Guess we just gave them a pretty big wake-up call. Hopefully they hit snooze," Max added, reloading with a kind of grim satisfaction. Lyra joined them, rig tucked under her arm. "I'd say they'll be plenty distracted. We've got a window, but it won't last." Jackson nodded, mind already racing with the possibilities. "Then let's move. We've got a rebellion to lead, and I'd hate to keep them waiting." As they moved out, the weight of their actions settled in. They'd struck a blow, a small one maybe, but significant enough to shake the Graxillians' confidence. Humanity wasn't just an underdog. They were a rabid little terrier with its teeth sunk firmly into the ankle of alien superiority. The corridors echoed with the sounds of their retreat, whispers of a rebellion sparked into life. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but the first step had been taken, and damn if it didn't feel good to have some momentum. "Think they'll let us go just like that?" Leela asked, falling into step beside Jackson. "Not a chance," Jackson replied, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "But that's the fun part, isn't it?" With a shared grin, they plunged deeper into the Graxillian stronghold, a band of misfits and rebels carving a path through the darkness. It was reckless, dangerous, and utterly foolish, which meant it was exactly the kind of plan humans excelled at. As they rallied their newfound army, Jackson felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe they really could pull this off. Maybe humanity had a fighting chance after all. "Let's show these aliens what happens when you mess with the wrong species," he said, voice ringing with conviction. The others nodded, a fierce determination in their eyes. They might be outnumbered, outgunned, and probably out of their minds, but they were human, and that counted for something. As they pushed forward, the air crackling with tension, one thing was clear. Whatever the outcome, the Graxillians were in for a hell of a fight. Humanity wasn't going down without a brawl, and they'd make sure every alien in the galaxy knew it. With one last glance back, Jackson led his team onward, into the heart of the storm. The future was uncertain, the odds stacked against them, but the fire of defiance burned bright. And if the Graxillians thought they could snuff it out, they had another thing coming. "All right, folks," Jackson Voss said, not bothering to keep the sarcasm out of his voice. "Let's show these Graxilians that we're more than just their cosmic chew toys." The team gathered around in the dimly lit corridor, the oppressive air of the Graxilian stronghold as inviting as a wet sock. Jackson scanned his ragtag band of rebels, each face a mix of determination and that perpetual human state of bewilderment in the face of alien absurdity. They were going to make a mess, and it was going to be glorious. "Lyra, you ready to pull the plug on their systems?" Jackson asked, giving her a nod that suggested more confidence than he felt. Lyra Salen was hunched over her rig, tapping away with a fervor that spoke of having a personal vendetta against alien technology. "As ready as I'll ever be, Commander. Just a few more lines of code, and we'll have them dancing to our tune." "Hope it's not some alien jig," Max Crows chimed in, fiddling with a makeshift gadget that looked like it had been cobbled together from a toaster and a dream. "I've got 2 left feet and no patience for interstellar choreography. Lucky for you, Max," Lyra shot back, her fingers a blur on the rig. "It's more of a polka." Graxilians seemed to love the classics. Jackson snorted, adjusting his grip on the plasma rifle. "All right, once she's done, we hit them hard. Turn their own tech against them. Show them what humans can do when we're tired of their crap." Like a cosmic middle finger, Leela Grint added, her plasma rifle cradled in her arms as if it were an old friend. "I like it." The sound of clattering echoed down the corridors, a reminder that the Graxilians weren't exactly thrilled with the idea of being upstaged in their own stronghold. Jackson could almost feel the tension as his team looked to him for the next move. "Take positions, folks," he ordered, voice firm. "And remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human being who'd rather not end up as some alien's house pet." As the team spread out, readying themselves for the metaphorical storm, Lyra's rig emitted a series of cheerful beeps. "And we're in," she announced, a triumphant grin lighting up her face. "Goodbye, Graxilian control systems. It's been awful knowing you." The lights flickered, then died, plunging the corridor into an eerie darkness. Somewhere down the hall, an alarm started wailing, but it sounded more like a dying cat than a security system. Guess their tech was as melodramatic as they were. "Nice work, Lyra," Jackson said, unable to suppress his satisfaction. "Let's give them something to really wail about." "Do you think they're panicking yet?" Max asked, a smirk playing on his lips as he reloaded. "Or are they just wondering if it's time for their mid-shift coffee break?" "Probably both," Leela replied, peering down the corridor with a grin that promised trouble. "In any case, let's make it a memorable one." With their systems down, the Graxilians were as blind as a bat in a disco. Jackson and his crew surged forward, turning the tables with glee. The sound of plasma fire filled the air, a symphony of chaos that only a ragtag group of humans could orchestrate. "Think they'll regret ever messing with us?" Jackson shouted over the din, firing into the disoriented ranks of Graxilians. "If they don't, they're even stupider than we thought," Lyra called back, her rig still tucked under her arm, clutched like a talisman of rebellion. The humans pushed through the corridors like ants on a sugar high, using the Graxilians' own stronghold against them. Doors slid open and shut at Lyra's command, sealing the aliens in or out as needed, like some cosmic slapstick comedy. Max, with his usual pragmatism, took a moment in the chaos to yell, "Hey, Jackson, think they'll offer us a truce, or are we past that point?" "Way past," Jackson replied, a manic grin on his face. "This is what happens when you poke the human bear." We poke back. The Graxilians, for all their arrogance, were floundering. Without their systems, they were a dinosaur in a tar pit, struggling to keep up as the humans danced circles around them. Jackson didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the absurdity of it all. As they pushed deeper into the stronghold, Jackson's team encountered more resistance. The Graxilians had regrouped, and they didn't look too happy about the humans crashing their party. "Looks like they're finally getting serious," Leela remarked, taking cover behind a bulkhead as plasma fire whizzed past. Good, Jackson said, leaning out to return fire. Wouldn't want them to think we're easy. The battle raged on, a chaotic dance of light and shadow, human and alien. It was a testament to human stubbornness, a refusal to give up even when the universe seemed determined to grind them into the dust. Max took down another alien with a shot that he'd probably never replicate if his life depended on it. So, what's the plan if we actually win this thing? He asked, an eyebrow raised as if the concept was foreign to him. Celebrate, I guess, Jackson replied, half joking. Assuming we're still alive to do so. Big assumptions, Lyra quipped, her voice carrying a note of dark humor. But hey, maybe aliens throw great after-parties. The Graxillians were now on the defensive, retreating back through their own halls as the humans kept up the pressure. It was almost poetic, if not for the fact that poetry was the last thing on Jackson's mind as he dodged another volley of plasma fire. Keep pushing, Jackson yelled, waving them forward. Let's show them what happens when you mess with the wrong species. With a newfound sense of purpose, the team pressed on, turning corner after corner, each step a defiant statement. The stronghold, once an oppressive monument to alien dominance, now felt like a playground for the humans' ingenious chaos. Think they are regretting this yet? Leela asked, a smirk playing on her lips as she fired off a round. If they aren't, they're about to, Jackson replied, barreling forward with all the grace of a space rhino. Let's give them a parting gift. In a final push, they reached the heart of the Graxillian Command Center, a room that still flickered with the dying embers of alien technology. Jackson could almost hear the echoes of their panic as the humans breached their inner sanctum. Looks like this is it, Lyra said, her voice breathless with adrenaline. Yeah, Jackson agreed, taking in the sight of their handiwork with a mixture of pride and disbelief. Let's finish this. With one last coordinated effort, the team overwhelmed the remaining Graxillian forces, their combined firepower turning the command center into a chaotic mess of sparks and smoke. As the dust settled, Jackson surveyed the scene, heart pounding with the rush of battle and the grim satisfaction of victory. The Graxillians, once so confident in their superiority, were now scrambling, retreating from their own stronghold in disarray. Guess they're not so high and mighty now, Max commented, wiping sweat from his brow. Nope, Leela agreed, her eyes alight with the thrill of the fight. Just goes to show what a little human ingenuity can do. Jackson nodded, a wry smile tugging at his lips. We might not be the biggest or the strongest, but we sure know how to make a mess. As they regrouped, the weight of their achievement began to sink in. They'd done it. They'd struck a blow for humanity, and for the first time the future didn't look quite so bleak. Think they'll remember this? Lyra asked, glancing around at her fellow rebels. They'd better, Jackson replied, his voice filled with a quiet determination. Because this is just the beginning. With the Graxillians retreating, the humans were finally free to breathe, to revel in the moment. They'd faced impossible odds, and against all logic, they'd come out on top. Let's get out of here, Jackson said, leading the way back through the corridors they'd fought so hard to claim. We've got a rebellion to lead. As they made their way out, the corridors now echoing with the sound of their victorious footsteps, Jackson felt a renewed sense of hope. The Graxillians might have had the technology, the power, the numbers, but they didn't have what humans had, that stubborn refusal to bow down. Think they'll be back? Max asked as they stepped out into the open space of the arena, the stars overhead a reminder of just how far they'd come. Probably, Jackson replied, his voice steady with resolve. But when they do, we'll be ready. With that, they marched onward, leaving behind the chaos they'd wrought, the first step in a rebellion that would be remembered across the stars. They'd shown the universe what it meant to be human, and they weren't done yet. As they disappeared into the depths of space, a band of misfits and rebels fighting for their place in the cosmos, one thing was certain. The Graxillians were in for a hell of a ride. And for Jackson and his team, the real adventure was just beginning. Jackson Voss stood in the aftermath of their little rebellion, surveying the Graxillian stronghold like a kid who just found out Santa wasn't real, but did find the keys to the candy store. Wreckage lay scattered like confetti after a particularly rowdy New Year's party, and the air was thick with the smell of burnt circuits and Graxillian panic. "Well, that was fun," Max Crows said, rubbing his jaw as he kicked at a piece of alien tech. "Think they'll be sending us a sorry we underestimated you card?" "Doubt it," Jackson replied, wiping sweat and grime from his brow. "They're more likely to send a please stop breaking our stuff notice." If Graxillians even have a word for please. Leela Grint strolled up, her plasma rifle slung over her shoulder like a handbag after an evening out. "I'm just glad they underestimated our stubbornness," she said, cracking a grin. "Never thought our greatest asset would be sheer bloody-minded determination, or our ability to ignore the obvious risks." Lyra Solin chimed in, still fiddling with her rig. "By the way, their firewall wasn't even a wall, more like a decorative fence. Good thing too," Jackson said, looking over at the once imposing control center, now more like a smoldering skeleton. "Though I'm sure they'll be back. Probably with a new and improved human trap set to spring. And we'll break that too," Leela said, her eyes glinting with the thrill of victory. "It's what we do." As they regrouped, the full weight of their achievement began to dawn on them. They hadn't just survived, they'd actually won. Against the odds, against common sense, and against a supposedly superior alien race. Max looked around, the smirk on his face growing wider. "Guess they weren't prepared for a bunch of angry humans with nothing to lose, or for the fact that we improvise better than a jazz musician on a caffeine high," Lyra added, disconnecting wires with satisfaction. Jackson couldn't help but laugh. It was a sound that felt almost foreign after all the tension, but it was a good laugh. The kind that told the universe to go screw itself, because humans weren't about to roll over just because someone waved a fancy tech stick at them. "So what now?" Max asked, his voice casual as if they weren't standing in the middle of what used to be enemy central. "We've trashed the place, sent the Graxillians packing. Do we declare victory and start a band? First, we grab those dark matter resources they've been hogging," Jackson said, his tone turning businesslike. "Then we celebrate, and maybe start a band if we survive the after-party. Dark matter cocktails," Leela mused, pretending to mull it over. "Sounds like a bad hangover waiting to happen." They found the storage chamber not far from where they stood, sealed with what was left of Graxillian arrogance. A door that probably said "Do not disturb" in alien script. Jackson wasn't in the mood for subtlety, so they blasted it open with the same finesse they'd shown throughout this whole debacle. Inside lay the prize they'd risked everything for, a cache of dark matter, glowing ominously in the dim light. It was strange how something so small could mean so much. Power, freedom, and a massive middle finger to the Graxillians all rolled into one. Jackson stepped forward, feeling a strange sense of accomplishment. "Looks like we've got what we came for. Time to pack up and make sure the Graxillians know we're not just another species to push around." "Think they'll get the message?" Lyra asked, her fingers dancing over her rig, making sure they left a calling card in the Graxillians' shattered systems. "They'd better," Jackson said, his voice carrying the weight of every human who'd ever been underestimated. "Or next time we'll be sending them the bill." As they prepared to leave, the team couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. It wasn't just about the dark matter or the victory. It was about proving that humanity wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. "Reckon we've earned a bit of respect," Leela said, her voice filled with pride. "Even if that respect comes with a side of fear," Max added, still grinning. "Fear's as good as respect in my book," Jackson replied, leading them out of the now-broken stronghold, their path lit by the glow of their prize. "And we've got plenty of that to go around." As they made their way back through the asteroid arena, the scene of their triumph, Jackson felt a strange mix of weariness and exhilaration. They'd done it. They'd stood up, fought back, and lived to tell the tale. "Think they'll leave us alone now?" Lyra asked, her voice carrying a hopeful note. "Doubt it," Jackson said, his tone as dry as the Martian dust. "But when they come back, we'll be ready. And we'll have dark matter on our side. Plus, we'll have a better story to tell," Max said, chuckling. "Assuming anyone believes it, who cares if they don't?" Leela said, shrugging. "We know what we did, and that's enough for me." The journey back to the human settlement was quieter, filled with the kind of silence that only comes after surviving the unthinkable. It was a silence that spoke of relief, exhaustion, and the promise of more fights to come. As they touched down, Jackson couldn't help but think of all the lives they'd impacted. Not just their own, but every human who'd ever felt the weight of Graxillian oppression. They were greeted like heroes, though Jackson felt more like someone who'd just stumbled out of a bar brawl, disheveled but victorious. The cheers and applause were a balm, the kind that reminded them why they'd fought in the first place. "Guess we showed them," Max said, his pride evident. "Yeah," Jackson agreed, his voice a mixture of amazement and disbelief. "We showed them what happens when humans decide to fight back." As they celebrated their hard-won freedom, the team couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. They'd been through hell and back, but they'd come out stronger, sharper, and ready for whatever the universe decided to throw their way next. "Think the Graxillians will change their tune?" Lyra asked, sipping on a drink that was probably stronger than it looked. "Maybe," Jackson said, shrugging. "Or maybe they'll just plot revenge. Who knows, but we've got their number now, and dark matter," Leela added, raising her glass. "To humanity's resilience, stubbornness, and questionable sanity. To being underestimated," Max chimed in, clinking his glass against hers. "And making them regret it." As they raised their glasses in a toast, Jackson couldn't help but smile. They'd done what many thought impossible, and they'd done it with style, humor, and a fair bit of chaos. "Here's to humanity," Jackson said, his voice carrying the strength of every rebel who'd ever stood up against the odds. "To the future, whatever the hell it brings." As their laughter echoed through the settlement, Jackson knew one thing for certain: this was just the beginning. The universe might have its plans, but so did they. And they sure as hell weren't done rewriting the rules. In the shadow of their victory, with stars overhead and the weight of their journey behind them, the rebels stood ready. Ready for whatever the cosmos decided to throw their way next. Ready to show the universe what it meant to be human. And as Jackson looked around at his team, at the comrades who'd fought and bled and laughed beside him, he knew one thing for sure: they'd be ready. Because in the end, that's what it meant to be human. To fight, to endure, and to never, ever give up. The Graxillians might have had the technology, the power, the arrogance, but they didn't have what humans had. They didn't have the spirit, the resolve, or the sheer, bloody-minded stubbornness. And for Jackson Voss and his team, that was just the edge they needed.